One of the cheaper places to fill up the tank with gas, at least on the east side of Syracuse, will be out of commission for several weeks. BJ's Wholesale Club in East Syracuse just closing its gas pumps to expand the fuel station. Project's going to take about 6 weeks or so. Not great news with gas prices up a dime in Syracuse from a month ago. Joining us now, Gas Buddy's Patrick DeHaan, the preeminent expert on what we pay at the pump. Good to see you again. Thanks for being here, Patrick.
Thanks for having me.
So set it into perspective for us. How are we doing gas price-wise nationally and especially obviously here in New York State?
Yeah, you know, as we've really seen the summer wrap up, gas prices, to your point, have gone up a little bit in the last month, about a 15-cent a gallon jump from where we were a month ago. Average price is still $3.20 a gallon. That's not too shabby. That's also good for 10 cents lower than we were last year. Maybe not a bad time for that station to close if any time. Now that the summer's over, we're actually starting to transition to cheaper winter gasoline. So I do suspect before they shut down, they probably wanted to get rid of all that summer gasoline. But by the time they reopen, and by the time you're hearing about this, you'll probably be starting to see more stations rolling out this winter gasoline. Like I said, that is something that happens today. With it, a reduced price, and not only that, but it's easier to make that winter gasoline. So a lot of what we're going to be seeing over the weeks ahead, hopefully, is gas prices declining demand, and the switch over to fall, all working in our favor to eventually reduce prices.
Yeah, I think a lot of us were hoping maybe that transition was already happening. We kind of hit Labor Day and we think like it just magically changes. It's a little bit of a complicated thing. You got to get rid of your summer to bring in your winter, right? I mean, it's not super easy, and probably everybody does it not exactly the same day or time, right?
Yeah, that's what's interesting about the transition back to cheaper winter gas, and there's no deadline for this transition. Now, stations and refineries don't want to sell summer gasoline very long because generally their competition will be switching over to the winter gasoline. But this is something that there's no hard deadline for. So stations may be pumping that summer gasoline for at least a couple of days. It really is all in the timing of when refineries made that transition over to winter. But by and large, that formulation is going to be cheaper, and that's going to contribute to lower gas prices as we get into autumn. And it's not impossible if things go well. We could be roughing up on that sub $3 a gallon level, even in Syracuse, by the end of the year. That's something we could also see nationally, potentially for the first time since 2020. So let's hold on to that. Gas prices getting cheaper into the fall here. I don't think anyone's going to complain.
No, I don't think one bit. I know you're forecasting the summer, you forecast the winter, so I was going to ask you how low you think we can go. Why do you think we're able to go that low for the first time in almost basically 5 years or so?
Well, there's been a slow but steady rebalancing in the U.S. economy, right? Borrowing costs have remained elevated for the last few years. The Federal Reserve keeping interest rates high, in essence, to cool off and slow down the U.S. economy. Turns out when Americans can borrow at lower rates, they do exactly that, and that brings a lot of consumption. Now, with rates being elevated for so long and overall with the economy rebalancing after a lot of consumer behavior shifted during COVID, that's kind of led us to this era of lower prices. Now, prices, like I said, a little bit lower than last year, 10 cents a gallon, so not a huge drop. But all in all, as the economy has slowed down, that's also helped to cool off gas prices. And that's giving us a little bit more opportunity this fall to see the potential for the sub $3 a gallon price. In addition, areas of New England, the Northeast, really were subject to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. You were competing with a lot of Europe for that gasoline, but additional refining capacity has come on overseas, and that's helped to reduce prices, especially in the Northeast compared to some other areas.
Yeah, last one for you. I know, oil and gas can be a little bit volatile, impacted by so many things. Anything you're kind of keeping your eye on right now that could impact that forecast that we talked about a little bit earlier for the winter?
Yeah, well, the temperatures are getting colder. We're talking about winter here and there, but we are still in the midst of hurricane season, really in the peak of it in the next few days. So we're still keeping an eye on the tropics. Of course, major hurricanes can derail and shut down refineries. And keep in mind, Texas has about half, Texas and Louisiana, that is, have about half of the nation's total refining capacity. So if you see a major hurricane head into areas like Texas or Louisiana, that could temporarily impact prices. But beyond that, it's usually all downhill from here into the holidays.
We like the sounds of it. Patrick DeHaan, thanks for checking in with us. And, man, we can't wait for those sub $3 a gallon prices.
Right.
All right, thanks, Patrick.
I'll be here for it.
Okay.